20% trash and a prideful mob and the first boss all dead without dropping combat in all likelihood. And this is something that has caused so many problems for so many different teams at different times. It's such a unpredictable pull where there's so much that can possibly go wrong. But you have no hope of beating the other team if you try and do it so slowly, right? If you try and slow it down, there's just no way around it. You have to try and do all of that at once. So that is going to be right off the bat a very, very important pull in this dungeon.
Yeah, so what is going to happen is that they're going to be pulling 20% trash all on top of the first boss. They're going to be spawning the Pride midway through, and then they're activating the Goliath with that Kyrian Steward to be able to get that Anima Exhaust to heal through the Pride damage, and also just use the AoE Aura to damage some more trash that you're going to be pulling later on. So this is actually a very difficult pull, and if anything goes wrong, it can cause a team wipe so quickly. And that will be a disaster, because then not only do you lose the time, of course, from the deaths, but you also lose all of these offensive cooldowns that you committed to this pull, and all of the weapons as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pull where, you know, if it goes wrong, it is one of those situations where those resources are one time only. Once they are gone, they're gone. So here we go. We actually do have a difference in composition. We have the Elemental Shaman on the side of Piami versus the Death Knight on the side of Just So So. There's that Army of the Dead, and both teams are wasting no time here. Demon Hunters leaping into the fray. There's the Ashen Hallow coming down from Old Bear on the side of Just So So. Igloo going to be firing it off here in a second as well. There it is. And all of these mobs coming on top of Blightbone. A lot of damage coming out from both teams. Wow, look at what Dr. J is doing, though. 260k on the board there for the Mage of Piami, and he has just melted all of this trash. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, huge amount of AoE damage coming out of Piami, but Just So So having a little bit more single target damage. As you can see, the boss is slightly lower for them, as both of the teams are now moving over to that Goliath, picking up the orbs that are being dropped just now to be able to help heal through this Pride. And yeah, you can see Just So So slightly ahead on boss DPS, which is, to be honest, going to be the most important thing, because the pull is not over until this boss is dead. So to be able to kill the trash a little bit faster is safer, because you have to deal with less mechanics. But if you're able to cleave off of the boss more, then that's going to be better for dungeon speed. So it looks like Just So So might be able to finish off this boss a little bit quicker. But Piami is definitely catching up on boss DPS as well, as both of them are pulling some more trash on top.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge success here for both teams. I mean, getting this pull done as quickly as they have with, like, nothing going wrong on either side. Ooh, as I say that, Clix is going to get taken down by the frontal from the boss. Will use his Ankh button to get back up without costing a battle res, but that's 5 seconds on the board, and that's that Ankh used now. So Just So So, about 10 seconds in the lead here at this point. Looks like they're going to be waiting for some CC, and they're waiting for the next Goliath to activate before starting their pull. Piami doing the exact same thing there. Rentari activating that Goliath. Once they all get these orbs, they might get started with their pull here. Looks like Just So So hooking around the side here. They're going to be skipping all of those Blight Bags. Nope, the Blight Bag is coming in, but they're going to be skipping the Necromancer near the front here, and they are directly into the mini-boss. Looks like Piami is going to be pulling all of that Necromancer and Sorcerer in with this as well, so this is going to be a bigger pull on the side of Piami. Oh, but they don't have a mini-boss.
That mini-boss, though, that Just So So did gather up. So that percentage-wise, you can see 52% for Just So So, while Piami is probably going to end up a little bit lower on percentage here. And one thing that was a mistake for Piami is they didn't manage to get the Sorcerer into that pool from the get-go. So now they have 2 Sorcerers up here that they're using the Silence Sigil to be able to just to see them. You can see the Priest Silence being used as well. But we have Raging as an affix here. So if you don't manage to finish off all of these ads and they don't stack up, then it can cause some huge problems. As you can see, Piami losing a little bit of time on this pull because they didn't manage to stack it all up perfectly. Just So So, though, they're already done with their Pride, and they're gathering up this next pull. They can do a little bit of a smaller pull here because of the 4% extra that they have on trash from the different pull they did previously.
Yeah, this is going to be important here. Wow, just so lands that spear from Shrimp. That's going to take down all of this trash and spawn that manifestation of pride. That is the spear use, though. Does have another one already on his back, though. And he's now going to invis pot his way through here to the boss. And this is a really cool thing you can do with your priest in this section, is your priest can invis pot through. This starts the RP, gets that stun out of the way, and then by walking on over here, once the rest of your group is ready, you can life grip somebody on a three-seater mount, right? And they can bring up 2 of their friends with them. And you can do effective damage from range, of course, as a ranged CPS player. So it's a really good way of speeding this bit up on the side of Just So.
Yeah, it looks like Kure is doing the same thing. As you can see, the Void Torrent being casted from the top here. So both the priests are already in position to grip their team back up, except the mage needs to just use invisibility to move past the trash. But of course, that is not as big of a loss to just commit that invisibility, while the rest of the team would have to commit the Invis potion. So really nice strategy here by both of the teams, as Piami now also managed to get out. Brentari, oh, so it looks like they're actually pulling a bunch of mobs here on top of the boss.
Oh my goodness.
So this looks like it was intended. They are pulling the Necromancer and the Marauder pack here, which is really dangerous, using a weapon here to just finish it all off. Yeah, you can see Dr. J using his spear to deal with this. This means they're not going to have a spear for the later Necropolis pull. So we're going to be seeing how that works out for them. But yeah, different strategies. You can see 69% trash now for Piami, while Just So is on 68%. So still just a slight difference. Piami just slightly ahead. I don't think this is going to be changing anything later on. Both of them are going to have enough trash in that later area.
I gotta say, I prefer Just So's position here. They still have that spear. That spear is a huge resource on the back of Shrimp right there that they will have for this Necropolis. And Piami, unless I'm mistaken, they don't have any of those spears on their backs. And it does so much damage. The spear does, and so we'll see how Just So decides to use it. But right now, not only do they have that advantage, they also finish this boss sooner. There's that 1% death or trash differential, but I don't think that matters. I think that both teams will get 32% from the rest of this Necropolis. So here we go, Just So getting started in this Necropolis section. Looks like they're just going to take care of these little parts as quickly as they can before starting a big pull, and so will Piami. So both teams just handling the spare parts real quick before getting anything real going.
So Dr. J actually went back after the boss. That's why he's not here. So Dr. J picked up that spear that is in front of Amarth. So he had thrown the spear at Amarth, and then after the boss, he walked there, used his Dragon's Breath to CC the mobs, pick up the spear, and then use his Shadow Melt / Invisibility to have the spear in this pull as well. You can see he has used it for this pull too. But yeah, Just So dealing with it a little bit quicker, of course, because there wasn't any backtracking needed. So still very close between both those teams, as both of them are fighting this 80% pride now. We do see an enraged stitch work for Just So. That's why Moon has to kite around a little bit. But for Piami, the stitch work is quite a bit higher HP still, and also raging for them as well.
Yeah, this is actually, it's neck and neck here. Look at the health bars on the side of Just So, though. There's so much damage coming out from this Pride, and they're all so low. Old Bear has a lot of mana, but he doesn't have a lot of cooldowns, and Paladins can often struggle with throughput when they don't have healing cooldowns available. Meanwhile, on the side of Piami, there's a little bit more help in the form of an Elemental Shaman providing healing. Just So, that's going to be C-Mage's Cauterize procced there. Old Bear gonna barely keep everybody else alive. That was a lot of resources used there, but they did get through it. So that was what was important. And this Fleshcrafter now will be kept with them. They'll be using Mind Control to make sure that they can still trigger the next wave of the RP. And now they have 3 throwing cleaver mobs at each other. No! Shrimp!
Oh, no.
What's happened? Oh, I think he got hit by a cleaver there. Double cleavered. Oh,
yeah,
no.
That means if one person gets double cleaver, you of course cannot aim both of them into each other. So one of the cleavers has to be soaked by the tank. And I assume that they just didn't manage to get it off. And they just finished the flash. Oh no, that was the assistant. Okay, so for a second I thought they had actually finished the Fleshcrafter, but it's still there with the skull marker. So both of the teams having this Fleshcrafter here still alive. So the strategy that both of the teams are using is they managed to get the Fleshcrafter into raging range, because once the mob is low, it gets raging, and even if you heal it back up with like a sheep, then it stays on the mob. So the raging effect will actually stay. And you can just keep the Fleshcrafter throughout all of these trash packs. You need to use the mind control from the Shadow Priest to be able to start the initial event. But then after the initial event has started, you can just sheep the mob, and then you're going to be fine to spawn the next few events. So this is what both of those teams are doing, and this is why you can also see the positioning of the tank here, where the high HP mob is positioned between the Fleshcrafter and the Stitchwork, so they can aim the cleaver into it. Ulper is going down here. They don't have a Battle Rest available, so he is releasing. I don't actually think this is a problem for them, because they just have to kite out these bits here. They are in combat though with the Fleshcrafter, so they can't get a normal rest off. So that's why Ulper did have to release. But yeah, they should be fine, and he should be able to get back to the group once the next trash pack starts.
Yeah, Rentari also taken fairly low there on the side of Piami, is going to survive, but it will cost him his last resort. So that is one powerful resource that they will not have for the remainder of this dungeon. Both teams now pulling Rot Spew at right around exactly the same time. Although it's worth noting that these 3 deaths have swung the death differential. Oh no, Curry goes down. He goes down for Piami, and that is really tough here for them. They do have a battle res available. They will use it. It is an engineering res though, so... Oh no, Curry up and down again. He gets spewed disease aimed at him immediately upon coming up, and is eliminated as a result of that. And that is going to swing things right back into even between these two teams. In fact, just so I would say, at the slight advantage now, because they have all 5 of their members dealing DPS here, and they've already taken care of Rotspew. That throw cleaver now coming out for Piami. They need to make sure that lands on Rotspew. It does land on Rotspew, and they just have dealt with that. But here comes the prideful spawn for Piami, and they still have all of these raging mobs to deal with at the same time as well. Looks like they'll be able to handle that reasonably well enough.
Yeah, so Curry, like the one problem with this raging Fleshcrafter is that if you don't aim that cleaver properly, you are going to get one shot. And that's what happened to Curry here initially, as he was trying to aim the cleaver into the Stitchwork, but it missed and it hit him, and that's why he died, and then died immediately again after the rest being used. So just some unfortunate events here for Piami. Just so on the other hand though, they did not trigger their pride. So they still have that Fleshcrafter succeed in the corner. That's going to be the percentage they need to trigger their pride. And I prefer that strategy, to be honest. The difference in the percentage that we saw means that Piami is triggering that pride without finishing off the Fleshcrafter. They already are at 100%. So they have to kill this pride here. But I don't actually think this pride is very necessary for this boss if you have this enraged Fleshcrafter, right? You can see just it looked like the cleaver actually went into the creation though. Unfortunately. So just missed the cleaver, did not hit the boss, and got it into the creation instead. This means the boss is going to take quite a little longer for them.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the benefit of Piami's strategy is that they got the Fleshcrafter throwing on to help them kill the pride as quickly as possible. So that's something that was nice about the strat. The downside here is this... Oh, wow, they managed to kill Sturgeon and Stitch Flesh right before the escape as well. So now they'll be taking this Fleshcrafter with them up to the last boss, and that will be all they need to stop the timer here. And they are firmly in the lead at this point as a result of just so failing to one-phase Stitch Flesh, hooking it back down now, but because of those missed cleavers, this thing is just taking so much longer for them. Piami getting onto this last boss right now, and they are using the Ashen Hallow, the Bloodlust. They will have that Fleshcrafter teleport up here momentarily. There it is. It'll be evading for a bit, so they won't have any ability to control it for a sec. They need to make sure they land this cleaver, and it's during the storm as well. Great job, though, by them landing it on Nalthor, and Nalthor is already at 50% for them. Just so going to be pulling the boss as well, but just so they have to kill the Fleshcrafter as well to end the timer, whereas Piami just is tunneling boss. They don't need to care about damage onto the Fleshcrafter.
So just also did manage to get the Fleshcrafter up immediately as soon as they were up. So that's a little bit of an advantage that they have the cleaver, but it's not going to be enough. Because of the time they lost on that previous boss, Piami is already on 17%. They're just melting this boss here on their side with all of those offensive cooldowns that they had available to them. And it's probably just going to be too little too late as the boss goes down with that last cleaver, and Piami is going to be winning this first dungeon.
That's right, Piami taking game number 1 here in Necrotic Wake on that one, and just the lightning quick speed that we've been looking at from these Necrotic Wake runs, taking advantage of that Fleshcrafter, and the throw is just actually ridiculously insane, Zyro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were watching kind of like a mirror image of what happened yesterday, where like Just So had the Fleshcrafter, they didn't deal with the Prideful, like complete opposite of what they went for yesterday, but then they just didn't use the Fleshcrafter at all on Surgeon Stitchflesh. Like, they probably missed out on 3 cleavers worth of damage, which would have made it so that Stitchflesh would have died in the first phase. But, I mean, they just threw their entire advantage that they had worked up over the course of the dungeon there. It's really unfortunate to see, because they played incredibly well throughout the rest of the dungeon.
That's right, and, you know, we've seen so many times where teams just kind of get sunk on, like, a first pull or, you know, missed kicks, bad CC, or something along those lines. And to lose to something like that, which we've been kind of hammering for a while as well, Dratnos, is just, like, kind of confusing.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that is the hard part of the dungeon, is landing all of those cleavers exactly where you want them. Just So did a great job of using their weapons, which is the other hard part of the dungeon. All of those weapons were used in really clever ways at really great times, but they ended up just losing. I mean, they had their deaths. Several of those were to cleavers going wrong, and they didn't land the cleavers on the important targets as well. So that ended up costing them here the less than a minute that they lost this map by. That's tough. That's the way it goes, though.
Yeah, no question. And, you know, you're seeing right here, final times aren't, you know, too terribly far apart. And at this point, you know, you're also going to have to kind of compare it a little bit towards, you know, some of the other teams who've been having, you know, 12 and a half, you know, just under 13-minute runs as well, Nagura. So the competition for this dungeon can get, like, even stronger, even tighter as well.
Yeah, it's incredible to see the strategies from the teams in these dungeons. When you clear a dungeon in 13 minutes and it's still not the fastest run because some other team did even riskier stuff or just aimed the cleaver slightly better or were just doing other things that somehow managed to be even riskier than what you're doing, that's just crazy to see. And how risky all of this stuff is, and having these cleavers, as you can see, Kuri just slightly mispositioning himself, getting a cleaver onto him, and just getting one-shot by it, right? And then we all know on the third boss, if you misposition the Stitchworks compared to the boss, then you get the hooks on the wrong players, and the boss fixates a player. If that player's in the wrong position, then the cleaver goes into the wrong target, and so on. It's just so difficult to get every single portion of this dungeon right.
Yeah, and let's start talking about some of the highlights you got for us, Zyro, as well. I mean, you were saying from the beginning that this was going to be a potential decider for the rest of the series, or a potential bellwether for it.
Yeah, and a lot of it came down to how the teams ended up using their weapons, and specifically how they played at the end of the dungeon. This pull right here, where Dr. J looks like he got a crit on his spear, instantly killed all the trash, and bursted the boss down. Like, he went from doing about 200k damage overall on the pull to bursting up to 4.8 million damage instantly on the pull. And if I didn't know any better, I would think that Combust is whitelisted for spears because he did so much burst damage, but I'm pretty sure that's just not the case and shouldn't be the case if it is somehow on the tournament realm. But then, you know, we saw this yesterday also from Just So, where they just kind of randomly threw out rot deaths everywhere in this necropolis. Unfortunately, Shrimp being targeted by, I believe, all 3 of the spears there, so there really wasn't a whole lot he could do unless both the tank and another player hopped in, but just, yeah, not the greatest execution here. And then, of course, we talked about it already, but just really not being able to efficiently use the Fleshcrafter. I believe that was the first throw spear they actually even used on this encounter here. Most of the time it was polyed off in a corner, and their mage really wasn't working on getting all the throw cleavers in. But to be honest, that's a really tough thing for a mage to do, right? You have to perfectly manage the cooldown of the throw cleaver. It has about I believe it's either a 12 or a 15-second cooldown. Can't remember off the top of my head. Being able to fit your combust in between those throw cleavers and still polymorphing it and breaking it out with your own frostbolt on the cooldown of the throw cleaver, it's a really tough thing to do for a mage. So if they haven't really practiced it before, it would make sense why they haven't really been able to pull it off in competition as of yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is also just how they're sort of distributing a lot of those responsibilities as well is always very, very tough for a lot of these teams too. So kind of setting our sights onto Mists for our next dungeon though, Dratnos. What are we going to be looking at on this one?
Yeah, so Mist, we have our live key affixes available here. We have a Bolstering, Necrotic, Tyrannical. This is a tough combination of affixes, although this dungeon in particular, there's a lot of ways to mitigate them, right? There's a lot of naturally small-ish bolstering pulls. The maze in particular is a spot where a lot of cool strategies that revolve around like pulling an extra pack over a wall or from the next room are made a lot harder by bolstering. So teams have, it looks like the one that's kind of really been adopted is pull some trash into the mini boss in the middle of the maze. But other than that, it just causes too much bolstering problems to have mobs filtering in at full health when the existing pack is at half health. If any team has a cool way of dealing with the maze, though, that could be a big potential way to save time. Other than that, we're just looking at these tyrannical bosses. One phasing the first boss during the damage burn is a really crucial way to save time. Killing the second boss as well from 10% to 0 before it finishes its guessing game cast is something that we saw happen earlier today that saves a tremendous amount of time if you can pull it off. So that's another thing to be looking for.
Yeah, no question. We've seen, I think it was like a setup out of Golden Guardians that they were like getting ready to do that, but weren't quite able to kind of get all of their CDs timed together. And so it's just one of those more elusive strategies, a more elusive performances as well, Nagura, that you see these teams always want to be ready for, but it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's also one of those things, if you commit on something like skipping the last guessing game on the second boss, if you commit a bunch of cooldowns to be able to do it and then it doesn't work, then you lose so much time later on, because then of course you don't have the cooldowns for the trash later. So it's really like a risk reward kind of thing that these teams have to do if they want to be winning. They need to try and commit and do these risky kind of stuff, things. But if it doesn't work out, and we've seen in Necrotic Wake just now, just so try to do this try to adapt to the Flashcrafter strategy, and it just didn't work out for them. Let's see what they have for a miss, though, because I do think that just so does not play the Elemental Shaman. At least we haven't seen it from them so far. Well, we know that Piami does play it, and this is a dungeon where we've seen the Elemental Shaman be played a lot.
Yeah, as in particular. Oh, we also have our stats as well, Zyro, here for the tyrannical side of Mists.
Wow. I mean, that's actually pretty impressive that we only have one average death, right? I mean, that's pretty good. Of course, Mist really isn't really necessarily a dungeon where you die too much. It's just where you lose a lot of time due to execution, right? Like, if you don't one-phase the first boss, usually you aren't going to die because you can just commit your combusting into the second damage amp phase. You'll just lose like 2 minutes of time because of it.
Yeah, peak deaths, though, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. Is like whenever we have, any sort of mistakes and mists, it never really seems to snowball as much as some of the other dungeons that we've seen, like Sanguine Depths, for example. Nagura always gets really bad.
Yeah, it's not even 5 deaths. So it looks like no team even had a full team wipe, which is actually very impressive, considering that I guess most of the mistakes we've seen in this dungeon was on the first boss, or the most costly mistakes we've seen is people not being able to one-phase the first boss. But then you can reset the boss. Like if you really feel like, oh, we have like one dead player, we're not going to be making this, then you just run out and you reset. But that's still going to cost you a lot of time. This is why we've seen the Moonkins being played here in this dungeon specifically a lot. And this is why we've seen these mind control strategies where we have the soul cleavers being used for Ingra to be able to just skip this extra phase. It's going to save you a minute at least.
Yeah, no question here. All right, with just so down 1 versus Piami, we're setting our sights on another short, fast dungeon here. Mr. Tierna Scythe Dratnos is getting underway.
Here they go with the first pull of the dungeon, and it's going to be, looks like both teams are going to start with the Sigil of Chains to handle those spite claws in the back there for a bit. They'll slowly be filtering in here, but because of that chains slow, it'll be a little bit of time before they get here, and this is damage that they can now deal to the higher health mobs, and this is a great way to play around the bolstering affix. And then we see that beam coming out from Curry on the side of Piami, handling all the casts. There it is on Just So's side as well, and look at everything dying. Beautiful bolstering management here coming out. Wow. Oh, no. Curry down on the side of Piami as Rentari is already running ahead, setting up the CC in the next section. What is going on here from Piami? It looks like he's starting the next pull already. And he's pulled these mobs in front. And he's going to use Sigil of Misery here to keep everything crowd controlled. And this is starting the RP as well for those big Briarbacks to come running towards them as well. And now he's going to be pulling them in towards the Mushroom Grove. eats one of those mushrooms and then they'll start DPS on these. This is a cool way to potentially save some time here. Same strategy going on the side of Just So So as well, although they didn't actually pull that back. They snuck around it.
Yeah, so this is the bolstering adaptation we've seen by these MDI teams in Mists, because this way they can just get these two higher HP mobs lower, and then they pull the pack on top of it when everything is even HP, so they can just AoE cleave it down. This is a really, really cool adaptation, but it's very difficult because you have the AoE coming out from the high HP mobs, and then you also have the Soul Cleavers doing a huge amount of damage to the tank, and all of the casts that need to be interrupted here by the Soul Cleavers as well. So really well executed by Just So So though, as they're already done with this trash, proccing that 20% pride. Piami is close by, but they bolstered the mobs a little bit. You can see they're still on like 15 to 20% HP, and they have 3 bolster stacks. So a little bit unfortunate bolster management here for Piami.
Yeah, this is going to cost them some time here. As you can see, Just So So already working on their pride, and they'll have this thing almost dead. Piami, though, Rentari is under so much pressure, and these mobs do not respect crowd control, so they'll just be chasing him down. And look at how much damage each of those autos is going to take. There is his last resort, procced against one of those quadruple bolstered auto attacks from those massive mobs here on this plus 20 keystone level. So Rentari in a little bit of trouble. They are going to be able to recover and get started on this pride, but Just So So has something like 30 seconds now in their favor this early in the dungeon. It's kind of a repeat story of what we saw in the last map where Just So So came out to a lead near the start. Let's see if this time they're able to keep a hold of that lead and keep things from going wrong, as the Bloodlust is popped from Just So So. There's the Ashen Hallow as well. They are now on the clock to phase this boss and get into that burn phase as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we can see the Celestial Alignment is still on a short cooldown for Fly, but should be able to get it back up soon, hopefully.
Oh no!
Oh no, he has popped Convoke without Celestial Alignment. This is actually a huge damage loss for Just So So. This might mean that they're not going to be able to one-phase this. He's now using the Celestial Alignment, but it's after the Convoke. So yeah, he did manage to get some more damage off here, but boss is on 15%. Not sure if they're going to be able to commit. Looks like they're committing at this point, though. Yeah, definitely are committing to the boss.
Yeah.
Piami, on the other hand, let's see if they have their CA ready. Yeah, so it looks like Corey has the Celestial Miner ready, is using the Convoke, so they should be able to finish off the boss quicker. And this is actually... they're going to be making up the time that they were behind, probably because of that unfortunate mistake by Fly. He just slightly used his Convoke a few seconds too early.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it looked like his CA was coming up right when the damage amp would have ended. And so there was no way to get a CA Convoke into that damage amp phase, which means maybe they were just going way faster than they'd ever gone before in practice. That's something that can happen in these MDI runs, is sometimes you start having these runs that are so good that you get to these moments and you don't have the cooldowns you're used to having for them. And so that ended up costing Just So So all of that extra time that they gained there. They probably needed to wait to phase the boss and push their cooldowns a little bit. But it's something that's so hard to notice and call out in one of these runs. And both teams now on the exact same pull. So this has really evened things up here between these two teams. Just So So, 2 seconds ahead in terms of when they killed the boss, and 5 seconds of death differential, so 7 total seconds in their advantage here. It's all going to come down to the bolstering management in this maze section here, and I actually think Piami are getting the better of it here. It looks like they've gotten more mobs low before they've had their first bolstering stack come out. I think they might finish this pull first. It's going to be really close.
Yeah, probably really close, as these Guardians and Defenders are the ones who have the most HP in these pulls. Usually, most trash packs have very similar HP, but some of these Defenders do have slightly more, so you want to make sure that you're cleaving off of them. But then you also have these high priority targets like the Stalkers that do a huge amount of damage if the cast actually is going through. So you definitely want to make sure that you're evenly cleaving it all, and it looks like both of them are doing a really good job. At this point, I would still say that Just So So is slightly ahead because of the 5 seconds that we have on the board here for Piami on a death timer. But Piami just dealt with this trash bag so fast. They're already moving on to the next. Man, they really dealt with this trash bag very cleanly.
Yeah, they are zooming through this maze. They're doing a great job here of distributing their damage proportional to how much health all these mobs have. And one thing they're doing as well is they keep letting these Stalker bites go through. That Stalker bite is pretty deadly, but the Stalker is a much lower health mob than all of the surrounding ones. So letting it actually jump out of the pack with its Misveil Bite can be advantageous for the bolstering affix. There you can see the Stalker separated from the other mobs is letting them kind of cleave down those higher health mobs first, and now they're able to switch some damage into it and have everything die right around the same time. One problem here, they didn't actually get to drop combat before this Pride actually finished its spawning sequence, and neither did neither did Just So. So both teams, unfortunately, not able to open the door to the next room there, although it looks like Piami have gotten it done with invisibility fired off by Dr. J to open up that door, or maybe Shadow Meld used to get out of combat with that Pride and quickly tap the door to open it up, and so will Just So. So both teams working their way now, bringing this Pride into the next trash pull. This is a huge Ancestral Guidance healing opportunity as well for the Shaman. This is one of the big benefits of that Elemental Shaman, is the ability to just press Ancestral Guidance and top the team up here. You can see climbing the HPS meters is Shrimp on the side of Just So. 5,000 HPS put out by that spec on this situation. It is so strong when there is like 5 targets to hit your Chain Lightnings on.
Yeah, this might actually be a big reason why Fly on the Moonkin is not actually playing Heart of the Wild, because he figures, I mean, why would I need to heal when we have that Shaman with this Celestial Guidance here to help out with the heal? You see the Convoke being used actually for both Moonkins here on this mini-boss, and both of them also pulling extra trash on top. So there's multiple ways on how you can get some extra trash packs on top of the existing ones by using pets. It can be used the Force of Nature, also the Elemental from the Shamans, to be able to get some extra trash percentage on top. And this is exactly what they're doing here. And this is why Piami got that 60% Pride. They also used Shadow Melt again to be able to trigger the next event. And they're pulling the Pride on top of the trash. So Piami, incredibly fast during this maze. Definitely making up a lot of time here compared to Just So.
Yeah, Just So are going to be starting the same pull that Piami are currently working on, so absolutely, even though Just So finished that first boss faster, they are losing a lot of time in this maze relative to Piami, and I have to say, I think it is just that bolstering affix management. Piami is doing a fantastic job. You can see Dr. J's Pyroblasts are always being aimed at the highest health mob, and that is a really great way to make sure that affix is kept under control. Now, with this prideful buff, Piami are going directly into the boss, and this is a great situation for them to be in. Let's see how well they're able to handle this boss. Let's see if they are able to skip that 10% cast. That is going to be a huge deal, but given that it is a plus 20 Tyrannical, we have a long way to go before we get there.
Yeah, this boss definitely going to be taking a long time, but we did see a lot of offensive cooldowns being popped here, especially the most important offensive cooldown, that Ashen Hollow by Igloo. You can see him topping the DPS by a lot, because none of the other damage dealers actually had their offensive cooldowns ready just yet at the pull. They are nuking down this clone really quickly. One thing to note as well is that I would say it's a little bit of RNG on this boss, where this Vulpin spawns. They do have triple ranged, so it's a high chance that it spawns outside, because it always spawns close to a player. But if it does spawn in melee next to Igloo, for example, then you're probably not going to be able to get a CC off on it, because it's going to be broken by any sort of AoE effects around the boss. And if you have a fixate then it's just going to cost you some damage, because you actually have to end up kiting it, which means that you might have to interrupt some casts. So if you're lucky, all of them spawn outside, and you can just use something like Root, Hibernate, anything really to ignore it completely, not having to move.
All right, here we go on the side of Piami. It's going to be them trying to set up the burn for Mistcaller from 10% to 0 before it finishes its cast. So what they're going to want to have happen is a couple of different things. They're going to want it to be just starting a sequence of casts, and they're going to want to make sure there are no illusory Vulpins around to accidentally soak up any of that CA Convoke that Curry is going to send into the boss. There's that Vulpin now. It's been hexed, and here comes the Guessing Game, and here comes that CA Convoke. All of this damage coming out into the boss. 5%, though, is going to be all they can get it down to. They will have to switch targets here and target the illusory clone. Unfortunate turn of events there for Piami is going to cost them a little bit of time relative to that theoretical optimal strategy of phasing Mistcaller from 10 to 0 without another guessing game. As soon as the boss goes down, it looks like they aren't going to be going the side route either. They're going to be waiting for this mist to dissipate so that they can head further down here. Let's turn our eyes over now to the left-hand side here on Just So So's screen and see if they maybe have a way of getting Mistcaller from 10 to 0 without having to deal with that guessing game phase. Because if they can do that, this will make up a lot of the gap between these two teams. There's the CA, there's the Convoke. They're during a dodgeball cast as well, so that's good news. Here comes that guessing game cast. 4%, 3%. It's not going to be enough. The boss has a 90% damage reduction on now, or maybe 99. So they're going to have to switch over to the Illusory Clone instead at this point, and that is a unfortunate turn of events for them as well. Both teams tried to make that happen, were unable to do so. Piami now onto this big trash pool.
Yeah, this is a huge pull. It looks like they pulled 3 trash groups on top of each other. A lot of these smaller mobs actually don't bolster, which is really good for them. Otherwise, these mobs would be incredibly high bolstered. It's only the Reavers that they pulled on top. 2 Reavers actually they pulled. And then you also have the higher HP Gullets that are also bolstering. But it looks like they have a lot of very, very even damage. So really, really nice with the bolstering management here for Piami, as they are proccing that 85% pride. And they're pretty far in the lead at this point because they dealt with this mace just quite a bit quicker compared to Just So. Just So just now waiting to be able to jump down and do the same thing. And after this pride, I do think we're going to be seeing... We've seen some teams just skip the last pride, of course, but just pull some trash on top of the boss, which can't be a thing when it's bolstering, obviously. So they have to just deal with the trash before they go to the boss, or they decide to skip past it and use the pride for the boss.
Oh no, it looks like Fly may have DC'd or something on the side of Just So, as he is standing up at the top of the waterfall, looking wistfully down at his teammates, but not joining them on this pull. They are going to be doing their best with 4 players and hopefully be rejoined by their Moonkin as soon as possible on this big pull, but it is so much harder when you are missing that player, especially on this pull. There's so much going on, and they are under so much pressure. You can see Necrotic Sacks on 3 players of the group as these mobs are getting out of control here. Piami, though, working at 87% trash here. Once they finish this trash pull, they will be up almost at 100%, and all they will have to do is finish off the last boss and a tiny bit of trash to put them over the finish line. Here they go now, walking towards Tredova, and they are going to get this pull started, and later on during the boss they'll be pulling 1 pack of mobs, a few larvae and 1 bigger mob, and they will kill the boss and that big mob right around the same time to stop the timer. So far their timer is actually going to be a bit slower than we've seen out of some of the very top runs so far this weekend, but it is not looking bad at all. This timer is looking quite good for Piami. That 1 death on the board is so far our only death here, and Fly has rejoined the battlefield for Just So. Somehow they were able to get that pull done without any deaths in his absence, which is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, really well done by Just So to be able to recover from this very unfortunate DC. But Piami, at this point, are just so far ahead as they're fighting Tredova. They have used all of their offensive cooldowns here initially with the Bloodlust as well. And the boss is down to 50%. This boss is taking a long time still because it is tyrannical, of course. And it looks like Moon is going down for Just So. And Shrimp as well, as they might be able to... yeah, this is not going to be... They might be able to get a Shadow Melt off on their Druid and rest them back up on this side. But yeah, just problems over problems here for Just So, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, this was their first deaths in the dungeon somehow. Somehow everything else ended up not costing them any deaths, but now they've finally lost a couple. Great job, though, landing that B-Res and somehow not turning this into a full team wipe. As there is the Cauterize procced. None of this is going to be enough, though, unless something goes catastrophically wrong for Piami. Tredova now sub 30%. Look for them to be pulling that last little bit of trash in on top of the boss in the very near future here. 25% and falling. Maybe once they take care of these larvae. Yeah, they're Igloo running away a little bit to the side there. That might have been just to break the mind link. Getting back on the boss now. And yeah, this is the boss does get hectic at the end here. It's not impossible for them to wipe from this spot, but it would be pretty tough to do so. I mean, the boss is so low now. There you can see... Actually, that might just be the boss ads coming in, so they may still not have their trash pulled as of yet. They do still need to get 4% before this dungeon's over, but maybe they've decided to just finish the boss first since so much was going wrong for their opponent and not risk anything else happening here for them. And Tradova now 4% HP. Meanwhile, Just So having some more deaths happening for them. This looks like something they might be able to recover from, but they just don't have the kind of time they need, as Piami are now pulling a bunch of trash. And actually, one benefit of this might be, I don't think they need all of these big mobs. I think maybe once they kill off the little ones here, yeah, there it is. There's 100%. The timer will stop for Piami. 2-0 in this series. They are going to take the win and advance through our lower bracket against Just So.
That's right. Piami taking that victory, the 2-0 sweep, and knocking So out of the tournament. And with that, surprisingly enough, the